Hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new map expansion and lore video. Today, I'm going to be talking about the ancient civilization of Remuria, ruled by the god king Remus. I'll be discussing the history of this civilization, as given through the history of the decline and fall of Remuria, Golden Troop, and various weapon ascension materials. Of course, I'll also cover the possibility of an expansion into the ruins below the waters. With all that said though, let's get right into the video. Long ago, before the time of the Hydro-Archonigeria, Fontaine was nothing like it is today. In that time, humanity began to covet things that belonged to Celestia, and desired to break free from their fates. As a result of this, they were punished with tsunamis and 100 days of rainfall. The rains would sweep their cities away, forcing humanity to start all over again. These events would repeat for a long time, so long in fact that Gurabad and Sumeru rose and fell while the cycle continued. Eventually though, a god by the name of Remus would arrive in Fontaine, and he would take control. Remus became the god king of Fontaine, forming the civilization of Remuria. He would teach the people how to build houses, farm, and appreciate music and the arts. Additionally, he conquered the other islands of Fontaine, uniting the nation. His civilization became so great that even the great dragon beneath the abyssal depths yielded to him. Now, Remus wished for Remuria to become the perfect civilization. He believed that as long as the harmonious symphony of prosperity continued to play, his civilization would prosper forever. In his efforts, he would personally pay close attention to his capital city, Capitolium. As for the outer parts of his civilization, he would enlist the help of 4 certain people. Remus would share his power and authority with these 4 humans, allowing them to become his Harmosts. For a time, it seemed as though Remuria would thrive for all time, but of course, it didn't last long. Eventually, a prophecy began circulating in Remuria, which claimed that the civilization would face the most utter destruction, and its people would return to the primordial sea. Wanting to escape this prophecy and the cycle that existed before his rule, Remus tried to eliminate anything that could bring about the destruction. As a result of this, he would slowly descend into madness. He went after anyone who didn't accept his rules, including the Lockfolk, Bishops, and Barbarians. He would also try and get rid of the primordial waters by mixing it with an immortal stone to create a golden ichor. Using this ichor, he would contain the souls and minds of his people before placing them into golems. Remus attempted to replace the entire primordial sea with this golden ichor, but before he could, a rebellion began. This rebellion was led by the dragon prince Scylla, who may have been the great dragon beneath the abyssal depths that I mentioned earlier. Scylla's army would consist of bishops and barbarians, while Remus would have his golem army and the golden troop fight back against them. Despite his efforts though, Scylla's army would gain the upper hand, bringing destruction to Remuria. As he watched his civilization be destroyed, Remus realized his wrongs and tried to restore peace to the land. However, one of his Harmosts, Boethius, saw this as a betrayal and continued to fight against Scylla. Using a stolen goblet filled with golden ichor, Boethius would successfully seal Scylla under the Great Tower of Remuria. Soon after this though, Remuria would fall into the abyss alongside Remus and all of its people. Over time, the golden ichor that Remus created would slowly be corroded by the primordial sea. After the fall of Remuria, Fontaine would remain godless for a small amount of time. Eventually, Agiria would appear in Fontaine and settle any conflicts, becoming the Hydro-Archon of the nation. Now then, I think it's time to discuss a possible expansion into the ruins of Remuria and what we could find down there. Before I go in depth with this though, I'd like to say that this is just for fun and that it's completely speculation. At the moment, we have no idea if we're going to be able to explore Remuria, and if we can, it may not be until much later on, perhaps in version 4.6. I do really hope we can explore this area, of course, so let's get right into my ideas. Now, from what we know, Remuria was a huge civilization, encompassing all of the islands of Fontaine at the time. As such, even if we get to go to Remuria, we likely won't be able to explore every single bit of it. As for which areas we will be able to explore, I think that the capital city of Capitolium would be our best bet. The design of this area could be similar to the inverted city in the Chasm or Ankonomia, but with more musical motifs and technologies. I also think that the city would be full of abyssal energy and creatures, such as heralds, lectors, and rift hounds. Perhaps we may even be introduced to new abyssal enemies down here. Being a nation that fell into the abyss from Fontaine, I think abyssal versions of the Lockfolk or certain other sea creatures would be pretty cool. We could also get new humanoid abyssal enemies, which I think could be the people of Remuria who fell into the abyss alongside their civilization. We could even get 4 special local legends down here, with each being one of the Harmosts. Going even further, we could get to meet Remus himself. If Remuria releases in version 4.6, we could even get him as Fontaine's second weekly boss. He obviously relates to the prophecies on Fontaine and the cycle of Tevat, so he could drop some pretty big lore bombs. We could learn more about the 4 Shades, the Severin Sovereigns, and so much more from him. Once we get down here, we could also get our yearly appearance of Dainsleif, who could tell us even more about Remus and also the Sinner from back in the Caribert interlude quest. Of course, I will be making a separate video on Fontaine's second weekly boss, but that will be out after the first weekly boss for Fontaine releases in version 4.2. Now, another person who we could potentially run into down here would be Child's master Skirk. When we first bumped into Child in Fontaine, he mentioned his master and how he wants to find her again. Perhaps this is where we'll get a second act of his story quest, and where we'll finally meet the mysterious Skirk. Anyways, I've talked quite a bit about what we may see in Remuria, but how exactly would we even get down there? Well, I referenced a structure known as the Great Tower of Remuria earlier on in this video, and there is also a mysterious tower in Fontaine that we can't currently reach. Perhaps these 2 towers are one and the same, and the tower was so tall that even the floods couldn't take it down. This tower would then be how we enter Remuria, and it would also answer some interesting questions. As I said earlier, the Dragon Prince Scylla was sealed underneath the Great Tower, which could then explain the mysterious swirling winds and the dead grass on the small island. If Scylla is still down here, they could also provide us with some more lore bombs, perhaps about the Sovereigns and what really happened during their war with the Primordial One. There's also potential for them to be a weekly boss, but I think that Remus may be a better fit, especially since we already have 3 dragons as weekly bosses. Anyways, that's pretty much it from my thoughts on Remuria's lore and the potential for an expansion into the Lost Civilization. I really hope we get to explore Remuria at some point in the future, as seeing what happened to a civilization that lost against the prophecy would be very cool. Also, you guys really seem to like these kind of expansion speculation videos, so I'll be sure to make more for you all. I have a few other areas I want to talk about in their own separate videos, including new and improved videos on Chenyu Vale and Dornman Port, as well as the next nation on our journey, Natlan. I would love to hear what ideas you all have for future expansions in the comments below as well. Anyways, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Sources and further readings are also in the description if you want to check them out. I hope you all have an amazing day, and I'll see you all in the next video.